It is an extra. Now, Kenyans online have resorted to publicly shaming teenagers who post semi-nude pictures of themselves on the internet. For the better part of yesterday, social media users shared pictures and videos of teens celebrating nudity and posing suggestively with the hope that their parents and guardians will identify them. Now, at the same time, a Dutch human rights organization has revealed this week that online child sexual exploitation was a real threat in Kenya. We want to discuss that sensitive topic at the moment. Joining me in studio is Grace Kirui, Ted Dezom.
Yeah,
she's in charge of program development. I have been trying to practice that for the last... Have I got it correct?
You have.
Thank you so much. I keep trying, and as I hope to get better. Welcome. In a nutshell, explain to us what your survey revealed.
Well, our survey revealed that there is a presence of online sexual exploitation in Kenya, and the victims really are young children, mostly within the teenage years of 11 and 17. It also revealed that it takes various forms. So mostly we found out that there are almost like 3 various forms it takes. So one, we call it online grooming, and this is where...
Online grooming?
Online grooming, yes. So this is where predators, by the way, the FBI revealed that at any one moment on the internet, there are up to 700,000 pedophiles and predators.
My goodness.
Lurking around in social media sites, in chat room, trying to abuse or exploit children. So you will find that one of the forms now the exploitation takes is that they get into relationships or try to build relationships with children to obtain their trust, to obtain friendship from them, but their goal is really in the end to abuse them. So that was really common and happens a lot on social media sites. The other form it takes is that there is, unfortunately, children are being used to perform sexual acts on camera through what we call webcam child exploitation. So, and that one also takes its own form.
And you have real-world examples of these?
Yeah, it actually has been happening globally.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the organization also we work in areas of Asia. Philippines is a big, it's a big endemic really, in this webcam, but we found forms here also happening in Kenya. And also there is also some distribution of child abuse material happening in the country. In fact, we were in contact with the police, the cybercrime unit. They gave us cases of which have been prosecuted, and the individuals are actually in jail. So those were the forms that we were able to identify through the survey.
Okay.
And of course the emerging, the one that you've just given in the introduction, the sexting. Even though sexting and sharing of nude pictures is not
online
necessarily exploitative, but it somehow signifies that it gives like it's okay to share these images of children online, but you can already see that the 700,000, if they get in touch with these materials, they might use it to even now take it to abuse of the children. So those are the main, I could say, findings of the survey. Yeah.
Okay, and I want to let our viewers know that if you have any thoughts about this discussion, you can text us on 22422 or talk to us using the hashtag #CitizenExtra on Facebook and Twitter. We want to track your conversation, and we'll be displaying some of your feedback on the screen shortly. I'm curious to know from you, how are you able to get this information? A lot of it, I'm sure, some parties may not have been comfortable sharing. This must be a difficult subject to bring up. Just enlighten us, please.
Yes, indeed, Wahiga. It's a difficult subject also because of our cultural setup. You know, issues of sex and relationship is usually hush-hush. You know, it's a taboo topic. But we do actually have those kind of methods and strategies and we could say ways of bringing people comfortable, to feel comfortable to talk about these issues. So, and it also takes time to do this type of survey. But we were... So like for this one, how long did it take? It took around 2.5 months.
Okay.
Yeah, to just engage various parties. So we talked first to children, mostly of children between 11 and 17. We talked to cyber cafe operators because the cyber is still one of the ways people are able to access the internet. We talk to government officials, community workers, health workers in different parts. So we did the survey in Nairobi and some parts of the or counties in the coastal region.
In the coastal region.
Yeah.
And that came up quite a bit in your findings. You state that the practice is prevalent, or at least one part, because you said it's exhibited in different ways.
Yeah.
You said at least 1 or 2 of the ways is prevalent in the coastal strip, where sex tourism has a strong presence. Apart from obviously the lifestyle of the coast, where you go to relax and a lot of tourists and just intermingling of different cultures, what other factors would drive sex tourism and especially of the nature you're talking about in Mumbai, in the coastal strip?
Yeah, mostly, of course, it's the vulnerabilities and I would say vulnerabilities of families and communities in the area. The coastal counties have a high prevalence of poverty and the lack of employment opportunities. And so families strain really to be able to provide for their children. And unfortunately, these vices now come into play. So there are people traveling to relax, but then they find that there is opportunities to engage in exploitation. So when you weigh, like an example that came out of this report for the live webcam, there was an incident one of the community workers shared with us that we could call them brokers in this case. So there's a lady who was doing that, asking for if there are families who want to get an extra income or get extra money.
They did not approach the children directly, they actually went to the parents.
Yeah, they went to the parents because they know that parents really want to, in all means and ways, want to provide for their families.
My goodness.
So if you want extra money, for example, you can bring your children to perform this kind of acts. After all, that's the excuse they give. After all, you're not going to be in contact with these people, so you perform the acts and in exchange for money. And there was traffic to that kind of
and so this is pretty a true story according to the the testimony that you received from the community worker.
So eventually, and it takes an interesting so sometimes those predators, I would call them, eventually want to meet these girls. So they may travel over or they may just find a way to do it. And so by the time we got to the survey, this specific example, we could call her the broker in this case, had already stopped the business and had left.
Okay.
Yeah. So this exploitation is in different forms. So in this case, you can see it's not the child necessarily who wants to.
Although the child is the one who's left now to carry that burden and those images for the rest of their lives.
Yes.
The word cyber cafe keeps coming up in this survey, and you've said as part of your recommendations that cyber cafes need to be regulated. How many cyber cafes do we have in this country? How can you regulate a business that can be opened anywhere, almost any time? You know, and I guess what can we learn from other countries in terms of how they are fighting these vices?
Okay. From what we got through the surveys is that, of course, we want to promote business operations and everything, but that's the much they can do. You know, they can't like regulate somebody who comes to the cyber to open whatever site they have to open, but they do have like warnings. If you have been to a cyber, they will put like no opening of pornographic site, but really that is not it's not deterrent enough. So we would like, for example, to engage the communication authority in this case to be able to see if there are ways through, there's a crime bill, cyber crime
Computer and cyber crime bill.
That is actually being read right now in Parliament. So if we are able to engage them to find ways to put it in policy, for example, like the cyber cafes can sign maybe codes of conduct or something, so that it goes beyond just putting the sign on the wall, but to be able to, you know, enforce it in a way. This is because one of the things that comes out is, you know, there are cases where some cybers also try to, you know, open their spaces for people to watch these kind of things, and children might go in there and they're able to see these things.
So the owners are looking for an extra income, and this is what they choose to do to get it.
Unfortunately. So we feel that there's need maybe some form of regulation to be enforced in this kind of...
I want to talk to you about the Computer and Cyber Crimes Bill shortly, but before that, did you manage to give this data over to, for example, county governments in the coast? I would love to hear what their reaction was. Are they aware that this is a problem, or is it an open secret? Because there have been rumors about that, but from your survey, it now looks like there's proof that these things are happening.
Yes, there's indication that they are happening. So what, yesterday was the launch of this report. We had several players on board. Yeah, and our aim now is to take it step by step within the counties, to use it as an engagement tool, to just tell us that now there is evidence that these things are happening. What can we do together to be able to address it? So there is still room for more engagement, but of course it's alarming, and they were very willing to come on board to see how best to help the parents, or in this case guardians, and everyone responsible for protecting children, to be able to do that, so that we keep our children safe online.
You say that you have the same organization. Your organization has different branches in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
They've probably done the same survey, maybe not this year, but in other years. when you compare their data and the data that you have here, should we be very alarmed with what we are getting here when you compare with what's happening in other countries?
Yeah, I think I can give an example of the Philippines, for example. It's one of the countries that has been really hit with this cybercrime of this nature of online exploitation of children, and it was somehow coinciding with what is happening in the country. So there was a lot of increased internet penetration, which is happening in Kenya, and then there were vulnerable communities and people, and then they were able now to see how best can they probably use this internet to make extra income, and then it got to this level. So if you look at those characteristics, it's possibly even what is happening right now in Kenya. So that we have high internet penetration, we have a lot of vulnerable people and communities, and then also we have to look at our understanding of how to keep up with this high internet connectivity. As parents, for example, how do we keep up so that we protect our children? And it is really at a high level in this case. So what we are trying to do here in Kenya is to mirror these characteristics and see how best to get ahead so that it doesn't end up, for example, like the situation
we see in other countries.
Yes.
Coincidentally, the same week you're releasing this report, some crazy thing happens on social media.
Yes.
I'm still trying to figure out what's going on. Hashtag Ifike Wazazi. So, I mean, from what I understand, young people have gone to post pornographic content online. As to why, I'm not sure. And then others have gone to sort of shame them so that they stop doing it. Is this an indication? Does this sort of confirm what your survey showed?
It is an indication, yeah, because one of the forms I had explained is what we call sexting. It's not exploitation yet, but it's a journey to getting to being exploited.
Because these are young people who voluntarily posted their pictures on social media.
And of course it's alarming for us as parents, as guardians, as people who are responsible for protecting children, that there is now like a trend that there is self-generated material of this kind of nature online, and yet there are 700,000 predators online looking to exploit
content like
this. So you can only imagine what risks the children are putting themselves into.
Have you explored peer exploitation, where you know, both the person asking the other one to do it is 15, they're both underage, for example, and how powerful is that? Because normally we're afraid of older uncles or cousins, but what about their age mate who's pushing them on to get involved in this?
Yes, and part of these things, like I can imagine what happened yesterday is also as a result of peer pressure. You know, like you see, do you think this is what should be happening or what is happening? And I see this person doing it, so let me also do it. So there's a lot of maybe interaction and influence between the children. So it is indeed one of the issues that we are looking at and seeing how best to inform children about the risks that they are taking. And it will be also something to take up, because we would like to know if is it that they were coerced to give these images, for example. Is this something that people are feeling that they need to do? So it is an indication of something. But I tend to think for that age, it's usually peer pressure and imagining that it's being done somewhere, so I can as well it's normalized. Okay. Yeah.
Peer pressure used to be about getting the best clothes. I don't know what you'd call this kind of peer pressure. Computer and Cybercrimes Bill 2017, the one currently before the National Assembly, it stipulates what? A fine of 20 million shillings or a jail term of up to 25 years. From your view, is that punitive enough to stop what we are seeing or what has been revealed in your survey, or can more be done?
It is a deterrent enough. Those are very heavy sentences, but it's good to have the legal element there so that it addresses this. But it's also good to in addition to that, take a preventive approach. These things, it seems the culture is evolving, the way the sexuality is evolving. We have an internet here and things like those. So how do we take a preventive approach so that even though the law is there, we can back it up, that there is also initiatives we are taking at a personal level, for example, as parents, as communities, to be able to protect children. So as the law discussions is happening and being
on the punishment
side, what are we doing now to prevent this from getting there? And that's the approach that the Terre des Hommes takes. How do we make sure that it doesn't become an abusive a sort of exploitative situation.
Okay, okay. We've had situations where surveys like this have come out, shocked Kenyans, it's trending on social media.
Exactly.
By next week, we have forgotten.
Yeah.
We have moved on to other issues that are affecting the nation. How do you intend to keep this conversation top of mind? What sort of long-term engagement do you have with the data that you now have from this survey?
Yeah. So first of all, like we launched it. So we engaged the necessary, or rather the relevant government officials. So we are taking it from different approaches. We intend to keep the conversation going through this bill. We also intend now to take the conversation to counties, with children, with community workers, and even with parents. We also want to really make it, keep the conversation going through our partners. We have some partners we work with. Like an example, it's called Childline. Childline operates a helpline. That the number is 116. So if we make this public, parents
116.
116.
And you can call from Kenya.
It's toll free. It's Kenya.
It's toll free. It's Kenyan.
It's
okay.
Childline Kenya is a helpline in Kenya. This helpline we want to popularize so that children can use it to ask questions like. You know, when I was saying peer pressure, because even when you're 15 and 16, before you take this picture, something is, you want to know whether am I safe, can I, will it be safe or will it be shared or something. So those are things you can ask through that helpline so that we keep the conversation going. And this even includes parents that they can ask to call in, report and get some counseling on how to parent with teenagers in such an area. So we are using all these forms to try and keep the conversation alive. To
keep the conversation alive. And even as you release this data or this survey, what sort of reactions have you gotten? What are people telling you? Personally and as an organization.
Yeah, as an organization, maybe I can say it is it's timely, yeah, especially with the information coming out on internet penetration. It's good that we are now knowing that it is an issue. Yeah, so those are some of the reactions. The people and other partners want to join us in how to discuss and come up with strategies to address this. The government is interested, other NGOs are interested, and other institutions. So there is some interest in it, and there's concern generally that these children are being exploited in this nature, and the number of predators that are operating online presents a real danger for our children.
Yeah. No one called you saying we don't talk about such things here. That's sort of because there are many who say because of that kind of approach, a lot of these things continue, sort of under the surface. How do you deal with that sort of stigma or fear of stigma? And that's why people don't want to talk about this.
Yeah, I think we try and explain that. Even a few years ago, if you remember, Wahiga, they set up the environment was totally different from what is happening now. So it only means, and we usually say culture evolves. So then that means relationships evolve and sexuality also is evolving. And
even perceptions about morality seem to be evolving as well.
Yeah.
What was considered wrong, a couple of years back now, seemingly is acceptable by society.
Yeah. So in the process of all this, what can we do to be able to protect children? Because at the end of the day, they'll be here longer than any of us. What sort of adults are we looking to raise in the future? So we try and make it that it's not stigmatizing. And okay, in the past, sex and relationships used to be, an unusual topic to talk in this kind of forum, even on TV.
On TV.
Yes. So right now we have to be in the real. It's now we are living in. The relationships are evolving, sexuality is evolving, and you could even see now even children, like what was happening in that hashtag, are okay with self-generating images like that. So it means we need to also somehow keep up with these things, start talking and building relationships with our children and discussing this as much as it is unusual. Okay. That's why we want to come in as Terede's Home to be able to work with parents in how to discuss these things as much as they are hush in, like we tend to think, no, let's not talk about it.
Okay.